Alrighty. Well, it helps if you turn on the microphone, Corey. So we just got done doing the book review for Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. The next up in the queue is, continuing up on that theme is Gaia's Garden. A Guide to Homeschool Permaculture, second edition. It's it's a random mix here. But so this is by Toby Hemenway. Apparently he has I don't know if he has any other books, but this book is pretty nice. Just $29.95 USD. Soft floppy cover because I couldn't find a hardcover, and I would have liked to have the hardcover because this is a good book. This is the book that I will be coming back for reference for many years. Hopefully. This book is basically it's just like it says. This is a guide for homeschool permaculture. And what that means is you have agriculture in general. And usually, at the home we're talking about you got your flower gardens and whatnot, and then you have your vegetable garden, which you plant every year, and they have you're planting annuals, so you have to plant them every year. You have to replow the ground, and maybe you're doing square foot gardening, or there's a bunch of different ways to do it. But permaculture specifically is a philosophy of agriculture or where the focus is more on long-term sustainable ecosystems. So focusing more on like perennials that you don't have to replant over and over again. You think of perennials or whatever, in case you don't know. Think like what is it? Asparagus. Asparagus you can plant. And it's just a root or whatever, and the shoots come up every year after a couple of years. Fruit trees, you plant them once, and you keep getting a crop from them after they mature. Plants that don't die off every year, basically. And the idea is that you're building up an ecosystem of plants that work together on a permanent basis. So you're not constantly adding fertilizer, you're not constantly adding mulch or pesticides. You're not using a whole bunch of pesticides because your system is designed to either repel or be resilient against pests and stuff like that. So that's the idea. Basically, I get a little bit out there. You can imagine like what is it? If you ever kind of been in like science fiction circles there's this kind of idea that we live in an industrial society. We have a pre-industrial society, right? And that was like cavemen and agricultural society and villages and stuff like that. And then there was industrial society, which is what we live in. And then there's also the concept of kind of post-industrial society, where technology and the ecology, basically the knowledge of whatever the race is so advanced that the technology is indistinguishable from nature. It's completely integrated. Like it is. It's basically like the houses. They're made from all. Can you imagine like a future where like all the houses were made from natural materials or whatever that just kind of grow out of the ground, and they keep rebuilding themselves and replenishing themselves over time. So you don't have to repair them all the time, and they don't decay. And kind of like a tree grows, maybe a tree grows for 400. Some species of trees may grow for 400 years or whatever. Imagine you build a house, but your house is a 400-year-old tree or whatever. We're getting really out there, but that's the idea. Is that permaculture is kind of like, to me, is kind of like a step towards moving towards that kind of idea of post-industrial society. It's low impact. If you're big on sustainability or whatever, that's what permaculture is. It's like a whole design concept system. And this book is an introduction primer or whatever to doing that, and in the home, specifically in urban-ish areas, because if you got 40 acres, you can do like the full-scale permaculture over 40 years or whatever. But if you're doing if you're trying to build out a permaculture garden in your backyard in the city, there are different constraints, and the timeline is obviously probably going to be more compressed if you want to get something going fairly quickly. But yeah, there's a lot to it. They talk about planting different things together that benefit each other. So there is, what is the name of that? Maybe there's it's in here. Guilds. Got an index in here. We're going to use it. Guilds. Okay. I have found guilds I can't spell because, yeah. Okay, so there's, guild, see plank. So, a common one is the Indians used to use guilds, especially in the Southwest or whatever. They had a plant guild 16. What is it? Whatever. So the one of the common examples is you plant corn, and then you plant a climbing bean that climbs up the corn, and then you plant squash, which benefits from the shade of the corn. And they're all on different levels. They all have different root systems. They all the beans fixes nitrogen for the other plants, and so the plants kind of work together, both physically and biologically, to optimize the space. And while you would get more corn if you planted just corn, you would get more beans if you just planted beans, you would get more squash if you planted just squash. Putting them together, the sum of them together is bigger than what if you had planted each one individually into like big monocrops or whatever. At least that's the idea, and also usually requires less input. So a lot of the things about permaculture is about conserving resources like water, not having to fertilize things, letting the plants manage. There's a lot about soil health, using plants to rejuvenate the soil, and and I think it goes like physical layout of the garden and stuff, like considerations you might have for there, considering how you're going to handle water runoff, and it's very detailed. Oh, here's like a chart of like plants that host beneficial insects, right? And the beneficial insects will like offset the like harmful insects. So you could have like animals that feed on here's useful plants for birds, right? It's I think I'd say the art's kind of cool too, right? It's a really good book. This is one of the more, if you are getting into the permaculture, this is apparently one of the more highly recommended books. That's how I came upon it. Yeah, it's just like growing a food forest. That's one of the concepts of permaculture is a thing called a food forest, where basically it looks like, in many ways, it looks like it's just a random assemblage of plants, but in fact, every plant is producing a crop or helping produce a crop of some sort. So you just walk through and like nearly everything in sight, or a lot of the plants that you see in sight that as you walk along have some sort of edible properties. Either they're producing berries, or they have roots, or the leaves are edible, or sometimes maybe there's some herbs, and then maybe there's some stuff you make teas from, some things you make medicine from, nuts, seeds, and of course fruits, and it's always producing at different times of year that you're getting different products from the food forest. And as it grows, it gets stronger and stronger and more mature. The thought is that this is what many native cultures kind of helped to develop in especially the ones that stayed in, not the nomadic cultures, but many native cultures, they developed the forests and pruned them to produce the plants that we wanted. And then maybe the Europeans come over and over to North America, and they just see wild forests, but it wasn't. It was at least partially cultivated, because the humans are humans, okay. Just because they were Indians doesn't mean that they weren't just as that they didn't construct their environment just as much as everybody else did. They just did it in a different way. And like out in the savannas, one of the or even out in the plains, they would just burn large. The Indians, like the quote unquote environmentalists, they would just burn large swaths of land just to flush out rodents and kill pests and stuff, and sometimes to herd, like bison or whatever. They just do these big, huge burns and like killing off a huge part of the ecosystem. They were still human, guys. They weren't, nature hippie people just because they were Indians. That's hugely racist. That's a really racist way of looking at it, and a romantic way of looking at it. Even the Indians had a constructed environment. It was different than Europeans. So maybe when they came over, the Europeans didn't recognize the food forest for what it was. Of course, with the Europeans, they come through and they just chop down all the trees because they got to make boats and all that stuff. They got to have all the lumber because that's how they built their buildings. So whatever. I'm going way off on a rant and probably talking out my ass half the time here, but That's how I understand things, sort of. But this is a great book. I can, I look through it from time to time as I'm building out my, especially my backyard. Right now, my backyard is, we're doing a cover crop. Well, I'm doing a cover crop in my backyard to try and rejuvenate the soil because it's just like completely dead. Because I was going to start like planting trees, and I tried a garden last year and nothing grew, and I was like, oh, I'll get some trees and plant on. I'm like, no, I'm not going to plant any trees yet because if I can't grow a vegetable garden, what hope do I have of having a tree successfully root in that wasteland back there? So we're doing a cover crop, probably the entire year, probably all summer long. We'll continue. So I planted it last fall. We'll probably go all the way until not this spring, but next spring, before I even try to, because I'm not using any fertilizer or anything, because I'm practicing permaculture. And we see if I just want to see. I want to see. I have bought into the hype, right? Whatever. Obviously, I bought the book. I'm doing the no dig. Like I'm practicing some stuff or whatever. And like I know that I can go down to Lowe's and get a big huge load of manure or fertilizer and I can fix it. I could be planting this year. I could just do that. There's no problem. The thing is, I want to know if this is bullshit. So I'll put it to the test, and that's what we're doing here, and we'll find out. But it's a hobby, guys. I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if this is right, but we're gonna have fun with it. But I do like this book. It made a lot of sense. I like the philosophy of gardening that is behind this. Low inputs, low impact gardening. A gardening that is very close to a natural environment instead of a constructed environment. I still love camping and stuff as a kid. And, I stayed out in the woods all the time, always out in the woods, and so this is kind of touches on that love of nature that I have in memories from childhood or whatever. But it's a really good book. I'm like, it's a guide. It's also a reference manual, and I highly recommend it. I got it off of Amazon. I don't do any like affiliate links or anything for any random YouTube people watching, but Gaia's Garden by Toby Hemenway. Guide to Home-Scale Permaculture. Highly recommend it. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.